Hey you guys, so I wanted to do a quick video on something that I recently experienced or have just experienced over the years. And usually when I post about a topic, I feel led to post it because it's something that I've been delivered from and being delivered from, something that I've gone through or just seen a lot of people go through. And this is something that I've struggled with for years. And so I want to talk to you about invisible illness and depression. A lot of times when people look at you, especially if you present as extroverted, they just look at you as the life of the party. And so you may be going through something and you can emote how you feel, you can articulate how you feel, you can even show people how you feel. And often what I realize is I will get this response like, no, not you. Or, oh, you're better than that. Oh, you'll be fine. You'll get over it. You're just having a bad day. Especially in the black and brown community for whatever reason. A lot of times people just refuse to acknowledge depression or invisible illness. If you're not in a wheelchair, if you're not passing out, fainting, or if you're not so physically weak that people have to carry you around, people just think, oh, you'll be fine. I think because we've lived so long with long-term illnesses like diabetes, gout, high blood pressure, and they just think they take this pill for the rest of their life and that's it. And it's almost as if people have gotten away from the fact that God does heal and you don't have to stay sick. Like you can take up your bed and walk. So a lot of times when you're dealing with something like depression, people will take one of two attitudes, either the take up your bed and walk attitude, or it will be something along the lines of, it's not as bad as you say it is. So in my case, I do feel like a lot of times people look at me and just think that I was either exaggerating or, oh, maybe it was postpartum or um, whatever, but they just don't take it seriously. And you can cry out for help. You can go to leadership, be it ministerial. So if you go to church, you can go to pastor, you can go to your youth leader, you can go to whoever. And a lot of times people, especially if they've gotten too cozy with you, they just brush you off. They brush your symptoms off. They may brush off what you're saying. Or they may take a clinical approach and say, well, I'm not qualified to handle that. Maybe you should see a therapist. Or, and if you do that, a lot of times even your therapist sometimes can um, kind of brush off the things you say unless you're using trigger words like I don't see the point of going on, or I just want to hurt someone or hurt myself. Then that's different because those are trigger words that will cause alarm. And when you've been depressed for so long, you actually learn how to avoid saying certain things to raise any red flags. So um just come back full circle talking about the isolation and the isolating feelings associated with long-term depression or with hidden illnesses. A lot of times when you are sick, especially when you don't look sick, um, you can become really depressed because you feel like, when is this going to end? You feel like, when will I feel like myself again? When will I, have the energy that I used to have? Or when will I have a sense of normalcy in my life? And that may never come. And so coming to that realization can be really deafening. Okay. It's like it knocks the wind out of you, and you realize this very thing may just be the thorn in your flesh. Um, so that's something, like I said, going through my phone when I was at my lowest and having almost um, you know 1,000 contacts, and still feeling like there's no one in my phone that I can talk to, that I can trust with what I'm going through. So you may say, well, why are there contacts? It could be friends, it could be family, it could be acquaintances, employers, whatever, however. But yeah, I have at one point almost 1,000 and then over 1,000 contacts. And I went through one by one and I was like, there's no one I can trust with what I'm going through. I even remember posting it online, like all these contacts, I don't have anyone I can trust. And even the ones that say, oh, you can trust me, I would trust a stranger before I trust some of the people in my life, simply because, like I said, people can sometimes put you on a pedestal. But they're like, oh, I can't believe you're going through that, or that's how you feel, really? Like you have to be the super saint all the time, and you can never go through and you can never feel. Or then you may have the flip side of that where people are like, I knew you wasn't as saved as you said you were. So there's always that fear of judgment in your transparency with what you are going through. It can just really, really, totally be an isolating thing. Um, and I'm not talking about, oh, you feel a little sad today because you're broke. We all get sad when we're broke. Most of the time, you're not depressed. You just need a better job. You need more money. The Bible says money answers all things. So when you're constantly stressed about how am I going to pay my bills, how am I going to get groceries? How am I going to pay my child's college bill? How am I going to pay my mortgage, my car note, whatever your situation is? You can become depressed because you may feel hopeless. And if you get that check in the mail, you're like, oh, thank God you're not depressed anymore. I'm talking about like depression, and I won't even say real because that's real. Those are real concerns. But I mean like the blues, okay? I remember one time I was so depressed, and this used to happen to me a lot. I didn't even realize that this was not a normal thought process. I would go and get my hair done and be like, oh, I wonder, is this the hairstyle I'm going to be buried in? Or I'd buy a new dress or a new outfit and be like, oh, I wonder if they'll bury me in this. And I remember saying that to my therapist, and she was just like, no. And I was like, what do you mean? Now everybody thinks like that. She's like, no one thinks like that. That's not a typical thought process. That's not healthy. Like you're fixating on morbid thoughts, thoughts of your demise. Everyone's going to die, not if, but when. She said, but it's not a topic that should occupy your thought process every day. And I was like, oh, no, yes, it is. And it wasn't until I started uncovering childhood trauma that I realized this is not normal. I was there when my father passed away, so I watched him take his last breath. My grandfather died in the same house that my father died in. I wasn't there when my grandfather passed, but just the thought of knowing he was right there. I was there when my grandmother passed. Um, as she was taking her last few breaths, I was, leaving the house, and so death, and I watched my father at a very young age. I was like 9. So death has always been a part of my life. My mom struggled with a long-term illness. Most of my childhood, I was told she's going to die any day now. And so death has always been something that I've thought about and fixated on. And like, I just thought that was normal, commonplace for people to just be shoop, wiped out of your life. And you're like, oh, what next? Who's next? Who's next? And people die in threes. 2 people die. Who's the next one? And we would just be like, I don't know, who is it? And then even when the person passed, he was like, well, who got the body? We wanted to know what funeral home had the body. And then when we go to the funeral, we'd be like, oh, I wonder, what they got, how they look. That is also a cultural thing because Black people really fixate on what funeral home is having the body and how the person looks. So that is not so morbid as much as it is cultural, but to think about death as much as I did is not. And so I had to ask God, Lord, help me to think on things that are good and lovely and of good report. Even trying to share those thoughts with people would be like, are you good? Well, no, obviously I'm not if I'm thinking like that, but having broken relationships with siblings or having broken parental relationships, all of those things prey on a very human need for acceptance. They also prey on a very human need for relationship, for guidance, for stability, for community. And when you feel like an island, like I said, that can be isolating and depressing. And so you just have to come to a realization, naked I came, naked I will go. And again, it's like that's, but yeah, people, you should want relationships. I feel like when you go without healthy, good relationships for so long, you start to think that that is normal until you see people with tight knit friendships and relationships, and you're like, oh, I want that. How come I don't have that? And again, that comparing your insecurities, because you start to look at yourself like, well, is it me? Why don't I have good relationships? Maybe it's something I'm saying or doing, or why do other people close to me pass away, or why do they move away, or um, why do those relationships not last? And so you have to be introspective, but you also have to look at the situation for what it is, and acknowledge that a lot of things in your life are seasonal, good and bad. My mom used to tell me, no matter how good something is, it doesn't last forever. So enjoy it. No matter how bad something is, it doesn't last forever. So just push through until you make it. Nothing lasts forever. And when you think about things that way, no matter how dark the night, how rough the storm, at some point it has to end. No matter how good something is, you ride that wave, but you're going to come down. And so you have to be prepared for that. So when we talk about highs and lows, and emotional instabilities, it's one of those things. When you deal with depression, you're like, well, how long do I have to ride this wave, good or bad? More so with the bad. With the good, you're like, oh, I hope this lasts forever. This honeymoon stage in this friendship or at this job, this is amazing. And then when things start to go bad, you're like, oh, it's happening again. It's happening again. It's happening again. Instead of saying, this is just a season, that honeymoon phase is over. And now I have to, go through the thick of it. It's time for, whatever. Maybe it's your annual review at your job, and you feel like everything your supervisor is saying is critical of you. Just go through it, because your review is only annual. It's once a year. Do your best. Same with relationships that you're fostering with friends. Sometimes when you first start becoming friends with someone, you're texting, you're calling all day, and then next thing you know, the person won't answer your calls or text. Okay, well, maybe that season is over. The person could be unwell, mentally, physically, whatever. Check on the person. If they seem like they really don't want to be bothered, that's okay. They don't want to have a friendship with you anymore. Things have changed so much. There's so many different avenues now where you can meet people online. You can meet, and be careful with that, because a lot of times people are not who they present themselves to be. But, churches now have online meetups. You can even go in person to church and meet people. There are actual groups, people that deal with depression. You can go to those groups and meet people. Go to the gym, walk the lake, walk in the park, go to the library. I've met people in so many places where I was like, oh, that's so strange. I would have never thought. But the point is, the way to combat depression, especially that feeling of isolation, is to go and be around people. And a lot of times the thing is, when you're at your worst, you do want to be alone. You kind of want to stew, and you want to feel what you feel without interruption. But a lot of times the remedy is to be around other people, because you don't realize you're holding your breath, figuratively and literally. And when you just need to be around other people, sometimes just going around with people, you're like, oh, things are not as bad as I thought. Okay, or you're like, oh, it could be worse, or it just takes your mind off of what you're going through. So I just wanted to share that with you. I didn't have a bunch of scriptures to give you guys today. It's just me talking about my personal experience, talking about going through, and a lot of times feeling invisible, feeling unseen or unheard, or even feeling like people just don't take you seriously and what you feel. Just know that you are not alone, and you're not the only person who feels the way you feel, and that we've all gone through, and we've all had to just really press our way through. If you're still here, you still have purpose. Hey, you're still Earthside, so you still have a chance to get things right. You still have a chance for things to improve in your life. And I feel like if you just take that perspective, and when you're depressed, it's so hard to take that perspective. But just know that it won't be like how it is forever. And I pray that this encouraged you. So as always, thanks for watching.